Welcome to Sober Solutions. We are a weekly recovery podcast not affiliated with any particular 12-step or recovery program. However, you may hear us mention them. My name is Jason, and I'm an alcoholic and addict.
My name is Chris, and I'm an alcoholic and addict.
My name is Ben. I'm an alcoholic and addict.
And welcome back to Sober Solutions podcast. And it really is a welcome back. If you are a longtime listener of the show, you may have noticed that we took a 2.5-month hiatus. As you probably know, life gets lifey. And the show and all the requirements that come with that were really starting to get a little overwhelming for us. And we wanted to take a little break. We wanted to make sure that our recovery was coming first, and we needed to start to prioritize some things in our lives. And tonight, we're going to welcome back the team and talk a little bit about what the last 2.5 months have been like. So, Chris, why don't you start us off? What's it been like? It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Wow, it's been a while. Yeah, I mean, I agree. We had many conversations leading up to our break, and we had to prioritize. And certain times, like in life, sobriety's given us the opportunity to be able to do these things, but we are juggling just too many balls. And we got to this point, we decided for a short break, and I'm glad that we're back. I could speak for me personally. We were in the middle of a move with 2 kids and a full renovation, which we're still living through. So it is a lot, and it was a lot, but I'm glad that we're back. And this, I really miss this weekly conversation.
So, Chris, what have you been up to over the last 2.5 months?
Like I said, we moved into a new house about 30 minutes away from our old house. We're doing this renovation. My job finally finished, so I don't know if I've talked about this a lot, but I used to wake up at like 3 in the morning to get to my job in the city by 5:30. So now I feel like a human. I've been doing a lot of online meetings, which is very different than what I'm used to. And I really do enjoy them because it gives me a lot of flexibility with my time. I used to be kind of, I used to honestly bust Ben a lot about the online meetings, but I've grown to love them over the last 2 months. You cut out that hour before and hour after. So I've been hitting a lot of those.
Yeah, I think, part of the advantage of those online meetings is that I get to do it right here in my living room, or I get to go to the same meeting when I'm down at the beach or wherever I'm at. So it's been good. They've been part of my program for the almost 2 years that I've been sober. And I am enjoying, though, going back to live meetings. It's good to see some of these people that I've known only through a video screen. Now, as the world's starting to open up again, thankfully, hopefully, that human-to-human contact is what was so crucial to the first few months of my sobriety, and now I'm starting to get that back again. And as I'm getting closer and closer to that second year of sobriety, I really needed that. I needed that little shot of adrenaline, and I'm getting that in in-person meetings. But Ben, you're creeping up on 2 years too. What have you been up to over the last 2.5 months?
Well, I've been attending Zoom meetings, as you might imagine.
No.
Indeed. You know,
You like Zoom?
I am, in fact, a fan of the product that Zoom provides for my recovery. I'm glad to welcome you to the team. We have sweatshirts and bumper stickers.
I'm out.
Life got lifey. Life has gotten quite lifey. And yeah, I needed a break from the podcast. I think we all needed a break. And like Chris mentioned in those conversations leading up to the hiatus, it was like a dating relationship where, like, should we take a break? No, should we try to make it work? Should we take a break? Should we try to make it work? And it was like, if you're asking yourself those questions, you should take a break and see if you should get back together. And clearly we wanted to get back together. And I know we're going to touch on it a little later, that the podcast is going to look a little different moving forward. But yeah, no, I mean, sobriety, coming up on 2 years is, I don't think it was something that I thought. I think one one year was a milestone that I really kind of focused on, and I haven't really focused on the months in this second year, just because it's for the rest of um, my life, I hope. So, God willing, get to 2 years and little hip hip hooray, and then move on to day 731. I think that math is right. Um, but yeah, no, it is great to be back and great to see you boys.
Well, I think you make a good point in that if you're asking yourself constantly, like, should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do it? Should I not do it? The real answer is already there in the question itself. And that can be taken across the board in your recovery, in your personal life, in your professional life. It really is something that I've tried to move more towards, of like, just make a decision, and if I'm leaning towards one way and constantly taking myself back to another, and really landing on something, because it just drives me crazy. And I think that's something that we were all feeling, that uncertainty of like what we wanted to do, and finally having that decision made by what's best for my recovery right now. And you know I know for myself, I'll only speak for myself, I was getting stretched so thin that th- little small things were starting to drop off. And the last thing that I wanted to have drop off was something in my recovery program. Because I know for me, I mean, these last 2 years have really shown me that if any part of my recovery program drops off, the whole ship's gonna sink. And so it's something that I'm glad that we did, and I'm glad that we're back, because um, this is something that I do feel was missing, and I think that it's part of my first year of recovery, and it's something that I haven't had over the last 2.5 months. So it's great.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a reminiscing feeling being back on here, and it does harken back to those early days of recovery in rehab, in outpatient, finding meetings, going to meetings together, meeting up. And it's not that that stuff becomes less important. It's just that that's not what's required at that moment anymore. And if anything, this kind of journey that we've gone through has really been, it's just part of the evolution of what you go through in recovery. Things at the outset might not be as important, but there's still some things that you have to do to maintain your sobriety. And for me, the podcast was becoming a bit of a chore, and my load wasn't even that big. I kept questioning, how much am I really helping somebody else? And if I'm questioning what I'm doing, then I'm not living in the present. I'm not living in the moment of this host or this guest or this topic and so it became this thing of, what can I say that will carry me through this? And Jason, to your point, that we can't really compromise our recovery for anything. Like I know we had conversations about this offline, about this idea that we're helping people, and that's part of the mission, and we have to keep that going. And it's true, but for me, it's one of those secondary reasons to stay sober. Like, they say you can't get sober for your kids, you can't get sober for your wife or whatever. Like, for me, I couldn't just keep doing this thing for other people when it was causing tension, it was causing rifts between us, and it was uncomfortable and unnecessary. And some of the thing in some of the offline conversations that we had, I still feel that way to this day. Like, my relationship with the three of you is far greater than the impact of this podcast, no matter how many people it helps or doesn't help or whatever. Like, this really isn't about anybody else other than the four of us here. And so, yeah, it was a much needed break, and I'm glad that we've come back in with an idea of to take a different approach and not just get back in and do the same exact thing because I think it was only a matter of time that we would end up with the same result.
Yeah, I think you said it best when you said the word evolution. In the beginning of recovery, it's all about recovery every day. I mean, I remember getting out of rehab and you go to 6 hours of meetings, and then after that you kind of are supposed to go to meetings, so you live in recovery. It's just constant, which is a great thing in the beginning. What happens is, if you actually put the work in, is, through recovery you're able to start living life, and we were all just living so much life, and that's great. And we kind of went our separate ways in the fact that it was like, all right, we can only do it between Tuesday at 8:37 and 8:49. And that for me was what was hardest. Is I this is important to me, and helping people is important to me, because there were people that have really greatly impacted my recovery, and I really do want to pass that on. But you also said it best in the fact that when we were not all 100% there and present, we weren't able to help people to the best of our ability, which kind of leads us to our change in how we want to evolve this podcast. And I'll start off with, I think that we want to bring a lot more guests and perspectives into this podcast. Jason, myself, Ben, and CJ have had many conversations about this, but I think globally that is the biggest change. And we'll talk a little further shortly about semantics, but we're going to bring a lot more guests and a lot more perspectives, and hopefully that helps the newcomer and somebody that has long-term recovery develop their recovery and pass that knowledge along.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And if our listeners didn't know this before, we put a lot of work into this. And I think that we really made that point again here. I want to go back though to Ben. You mentioned two things that I jotted down: maintaining your recovery and changing it up. Those are the two themes that I got out of what you were talking about. Because that's what we did. So over the last 2.5 months, what have you done to maintain your recovery? And or what have you done to change up your program? Because I know for me, I've gone to more CMA meetings than I have AA. I have gone to more in-person meetings than I have gone online. What are some of the things that you've done to kind of like change it up? Because I think everyone needs a little bit of refresher. You were saying it yourself. When you're feeling like you're just like droning on, sometimes that's what my program felt like. So I was like, I can't just like exist in a meeting. That's not helping my program. That's not helping me stay sober. So what do I have to do to change it up a bit?
Yeah, no, that's a great follow up, and well, I mean, what I've maintained is Zoom meetings because that's the cornerstone of my recovery. But no, I mean, I still do my morning meeting every day. But actually, one things I kind of stopped doing is I stopped doing my Saturday morning men's meeting, and it's kind of logistics in terms of that's usually when I'm picking up my daughters or if they slept over the night before. But I just found the total masculinity of it. I don't want to stay off-putting because that meeting was literally the meeting that saved my life. It smacked me in the face when you two dragged me in there and were like, "Hey, asshole, get in here." And it's just what I needed at that time. And it's just not what I need now. I don't need a lot of egos telling me how I need to be working my program. And that if you're not doing it this way, then you got to be doing it this way. And that's what I've found in that meeting. And it's like, you know what? That's actually probably not the best thing because usually what I found myself texting other guys in the meeting, guys that I've become close to, like, can you believe this? Can you believe this? Can you believe this? Like, and it was like, wait a second, I'm just sitting here gossiping about the meeting. This is not it for me.
Real quick on that, I think it's funny how you'll pull out of a meeting what you need at that time. And
Right.
that's what I find a lot. And that's why I think changing it up is important, because exactly what you're explaining is how I felt about old sponsors, old meetings, just podcasts I listen to. You pull out what you need at that time.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's one of the things that I've kind of learned from people um, in that like would be members of the home group, and then all of a sudden they wouldn't be there, and then it'd be like, oh God, they must have died or something. And like, no, they're just doing the Tuesday night meeting now, and it's like, oh, you can do that, like, and sometimes you do need to switch it up, and yeah, so I've kind of gravitated towards making sure that I am way more attentive in the Tuesday, Thursday beginner meeting, the Sunday meeting, which is the third step, and really kind of honing in on particular messages, like you said, Chris, that I'm just getting more out of that stuff. But another big thing that's really helped me switch up my program is being the alternate GSR, general services rep for my home group, and that honestly was something that I didn't pine for or anything. Somebody just said, "Hey, do we have an alternate?" And they were like, "How about Ben?" And I'm like, "Okay, I guess I'll do it." And listen, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's the 3-hour meeting every month. And these folks talk about the weeds of AA. Like not the weeds of like recovery. We do a little recovery work in the beginning, but then it's the weeds of the operation. And so to see the operation, you pull the curtain back and see that, okay, this is like the whole thing. Like, in the when you're in the meeting, you're getting like the very edge, you're getting the very tip, and when you only get the tip, you don't see what else is in there. And it's just kind of been eye-opening to see like, oh God, there's a whole organizational structure here that exists to support the rest of that operation. And as I found in everything so far in my recovery, it wasn't something I searched for. It wasn't something I knew was going to happen. I was just open and willing and honest, which those are things that we talked about, I think, in episode 0, but it stays the same from the very beginning. But yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Jason. And so yeah, I'll throw it back to you. What have you maintained for in these 20 some odd months that we've been sober, and what have you changed up?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I maintained is actually, funny enough, that the fact that I actually pray every night before I go to bed. Now, my prayer is because I call my higher power God, but I say, God, thank you for keeping me sober tonight. Please keep me sober tomorrow. And then I have a couple other things that I say, because I talk to my higher power. I don't like get down on my knees. That's not my way of doing it. But I really have maintained that. And that's something that is big for me because when I was out there actively using, I not just dismissed the idea of having a higher power or any kind of religious or spiritual connection, but I flagrantly, vehemently opposed it. And so for me to maintain something like that has been huge for me. And I think that's what kept me grounded in my recovery program. Also, I have maintained my gratitude list. That's been huge for me. I've said it many, many times on this program that community is huge for me. And so I have a list of like 7 other people that I share my gratitude list with every day. And even if they don't do it, I still do it. And I hold myself accountable to do it because I know that the moment I wake up after I play like Wordle and Hurdle and Framed and all these stupid other games that I think I have a new addiction to, but after I play those games, I do my gratitude list. Before I get out of bed or on my way to the gym, I'm doing my gratitude list. So that's been huge for me. Like I said before, some of the thing that's changed for me is the types of meetings that I'm going to. If any of our listeners do AA and CMA, they know that they have similar roots, but they're different meetings. They're really different meetings. And I feel more comfortable talking about my drug use in a CMA meeting than I do an AA meeting, even though the AA meetings that I go to have never shunned me or said anything to me about like not saying anything about drugs. But it's just different for me. And I think there are days that I need to talk about wanting to smoke crystal meth as opposed to wanting to have a drink. And then lastly, I've stayed connected to my sponsor. I have used him when I have needed him, but also have just text him to be like, "Hey, how's it going? What's up?" Things like that, just so I have that bit of a lifeline for me.
You make a great point, Jason, about changing up the meetings that you go to as a way of kind of maintaining sobriety. And I think one of the things that I've kind of realized over this break and in this second year of sobriety is that staying sober is key for my spiritual fitness. Like for me, that's my goal now is to be spiritually fit. It's and for me to be spiritually fit, I have to be sober. Um, and I think it was I forget what episode it was with Matt S. Um, when he was talking about some of the professional work that he does in recovery organizations, and he was saying that this idea of total abstinence is not necessarily something that is for everybody, and it might not be for everybody. It's got to be for me about staying spiritually fit, and I think that that's again something that I've learned over the last uh, couple of months. In that, like, I feel like I've got the sobriety part. In that, the obsession's gone. I don't want to drink today. I didn't want to drink yesterday. I hope I don't want to drink tomorrow. Um, but that part doesn't consume my life. The rest of my life, which again, I can, like Jason, you were talking about having a higher power that you can identify with. For me, this is the goal. This is the lifetime goal: is staying spiritually fit every single day. And if you have to alter your meetings, alter the fellowship you're with, go from a 12 step to a 4 step or smart or however many steps smart recovery is, whatever it is, if your goal is to stay spiritually fit and honest, open and willing, again, then I think that's probably been the biggest, you know, revelation that I've had over the last couple of months. But I know we want to talk about the exciting changes that we've got coming up for the future of Sober Solutions podcast. And I was really hoping that we were going to announce a weekly vlog so that Jason's fantastic mustache can be displayed, which our listeners, you can't see right now. But I mean, this thing it's hang it in the Louvre. Hang it in the Louvre is all I'll say.
Thank you. Thank you. I truly appreciate that. I truly appreciate that. And what we've been talking about tonight is not just a look back over the last 2.5 months, but looking into the future as well. And we have decided that the future of Sober Solutions podcast is going to look a little bit different. We're deciding to bring different voices to the conversation. I think we alluded to it before because there's so much that we can say. And we want to hear the experience, strength, hope, stories, difficulties, challenges, wins, accomplishments of others as well. And so we're going to start rotating hosts on the show so that we have more of a holistic approach to the program. We'll be looking at guest hosts from early in recovery to the middle of their recovery to really long-term recovery, so that we really get a sense of what this journey is really like along the way. The other change that we're going to start to implement is that we're going to start releasing episodes on a bi-weekly basis. So 2 episodes a month to really allow our team to have all of the back end edits and recordings and guest setups and all of that kind of stuff to work itself out in a very manageable way. as we've been talking about tonight, life gets lifey, and things are going really well for us, which is wonderful. And we know that this is a priority for us in our lives. So we needed to take both of those ideas and make them into something new. I think one of the things that we were thinking about is trying to continue to do the same old thing, the same old way, and expect different results. And that is just insane. We can't do that with our recovery, so why are we doing that with our program? So those are some of the upcoming changes that you'll see here at Sober Solutions Podcast.
You said it very well. We implemented manageability and a lot of different voices. And I think the biggest change that I want to see is a variety of guests with a variety of different opinions, because like you said, I mean, we have 2 years of sobriety. I think one of Ben's prior points that he made when we were talking about, a slight break was we're talking about the same thing because that's where we're at in our lives. We're all at the same level of sobriety, or pretty much at the same level of sobriety. We're focusing on the young, newly sober person, the newly clean person. And it would be great to start to implement a wider range of knowledge. And I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, I think that, touching back on, I guess something I said and Chris picked up on is evolution. And the podcast has to change if it's going to be something that's a viable product for us to put out. And like Jason said, things are going well, but life gets lifey. Work for myself is really picking up, and it's consuming quite a bit of my time, and some personal things that we'll probably announce at a later date that are going to take up some of my time. And one of the offline conversations that we had, and I forget who made the point, but when we had a guest, the three of us had to figure out who was going to say the thing that we all were thinking first, and then how did the other two then get in behind that. And it is because we are all in the same time frame of recovery. So a lot of the experiences, the emotions, the things that we were going through, that resonates with our feedback and our responses and our questions. And so to kind of pull that back a little bit so that we get more dialogue from a guest, I think is really important. And to Jason's point, or maybe it was Chris's, you're both so beautiful. I'm not sure who said what at this point. But we were focusing a lot on early recovery, and that's just not where we're at right now. Like, we're at a point where we're figuring out how to live recovered lives. And, it's not that we wouldn't focus on early recovery. We want to finally, we want to address all of the, time groups, as it were, with, the newcomers, the people with 10 years, the people with 15 years and go out, the people with 25 and 30 and 42 years. We want to hit all of those areas, because there's experiences to be learned from all of them. They can learn from us, we can learn from them. And so to do that, we have to adjust a little bit, and we're adaptable people. We're like Gumby.
Absolutely. This has to be an adaptable program for us all. So we're going to wrap up tonight. We hope to see all of you in the future as we start to put out new episodes. And if you're interested in becoming a guest host, we'd love to have you on. Reach out to us on our Facebook or on Instagram. You can also email us at sobersolutionspodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to have you on the show. And as always, each and every one of our episodes is dedicated to the still sick and suffering alcoholic and addict, especially the individual who's going to pick up for the first time tonight. Have a great night, guys.
Have a great night.
Have a great night, boys.
We appreciate your liking and subscribing to our podcast. If you liked what you heard today and would like to support our podcast, feel free to Venmo $1 to our virtual basket at Sober Solutions Podcast. We want to hear from you too. If you have a comment, question, topic, or would like to come on the show, find us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Sober Solutions Podcast.
or you can shoot us an email to sobersolutionspodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And if you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show.